At 50 years old, Jonathan Roumie, the man who has touched millions of hearts as Jesus in The Chosen, carries a secret that continues to shock and surprise his fans. For someone so admired, so beloved, and so closely associated with faith and love, how is it possible that he remains single? Could it be a personal choice, a divine calling, or a hidden story waiting to unfold? The answer is not what you expect, and the truth behind his relationship status will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about him. Jonathan Roumie's story is unlike anything Hollywood has ever seen. In a world where celebrities are constantly in the spotlight for whirlwind romances, quick marriages, and even quicker divorces, Jonathan stands apart like a figure carved from another time. His life, much like the role he plays in The Chosen, is defined not by fleeting desires, but by deep conviction. And the most striking detail about his life is also the one that has left fans everywhere in shock. At the age of 50, Jonathan is still single. For many, that single fact feels almost unbelievable. How can a man who embodies so much compassion, humility, and strength not have someone by his side? Why has he chosen to remain unmarried when so many doors must surely be open to him? The questions swirl endlessly, but Jonathan himself has been honest in his answers. He has said many times that his singlehood is not the result of failure or loneliness, but a deliberate act of patience and faith. He believes in divine timing, in waiting for God to bring the right woman into his life, rather than rushing into something that does not align with his calling. This patience is not weakness. In fact, it may be one of the greatest strengths he possesses. Because in a culture that pressures men and women to marry by a certain age, Jonathan's refusal to compromise has become a powerful testimony of trust. Think about it. Here is a man whose role as Jesus has caused countless viewers to weep, to pray, to reconnect with their own faith. He carries that same devotion into his private life. In interviews, Jonathan has admitted that in the past, he could have given into pressure. He could have settled for relationships that looked good on the surface, but lacked the spiritual depth he knew was necessary for marriage. But he chose not to. Instead, he declared, "I would rather be single and wait for the right person than rush into something that isn't aligned with my faith and values." Those words reveal everything we need to know about his journey. They show that his singleness is not about emptiness. It is about waiting for something holy, something eternal. But what makes his situation so gripping is not just his choice to wait. It's the suspense surrounding what comes next. Jonathan has made it clear that he prays for his future wife, that he longs for a partner who will walk beside him in faith and share his mission. He paints a picture of a woman who must be kind, compassionate, and above all, devoted to God. He has spoken so vividly about her that it almost feels like she already exists somewhere, waiting in silence, just as he is. And that mystery keeps fans on edge. Who is she? Where is she? When will she appear? The uncertainty turns Jonathan's personal life into something like a living story, filled with suspense and longing. And yet, Jonathan does not appear burdened by this waiting season. He calls it preparation. To him, singleness at 50 is not a tragedy, but a blessing, a time to grow, to strengthen his relationship with God, and to become the man worthy of the wife he has been praying for. His attitude transforms what most people would see as delay into a divine appointment. Every day he chooses to trust rather than panic. Every day he refuses to see his singleness as a mark of failure, but instead as a season of refinement. That perspective is rare, and it is why fans admire him even more. Still, the suspense only grows stronger. Because while Jonathan is at peace, the world continues to speculate. Each public appearance, each social media post, each interview sparks questions. Has he finally met her? Is there someone secretly in his life that he has not revealed? Or is he still waiting, still praying, still preparing for a love story that has yet to begin? These unanswered questions keep his story alive, turning his singlehood into something far more fascinating than a typical Hollywood romance. Because with Jonathan, this is not just about relationships. It is about faith, destiny, and the belief that God himself is writing his love story behind the scenes. And that is why fans remain so captivated. Jonathan Roumie at 50 is not simply a single man. He is a man living in suspense, a man whose journey has become a powerful parable of patience and trust. The question that lingers, the one that pulls us in and keeps us watching, is not whether Jonathan will ever marry. The real question is when. And when that moment finally arrives, it won't just be another headline in the entertainment world. It will be the fulfillment of years of prayer, faith, and unwavering hope. Jonathan Roumie's decision to remain single at 50 cannot be separated from the role that has defined his career, portraying Jesus in The Chosen. For millions of viewers, Jonathan is not just an actor. He has become a symbol of faith, a living reminder of hope and humility. And while fans often remind themselves that he is only playing a role, there is no denying that his life mirrors, in remarkable ways, the man he portrays on screen. Just as Jesus lived with purpose, without a spouse or family, Jonathan too has chosen a path of devotion, patience, and sacrifice. But here's where the mystery deepens. Jonathan has made it clear that unlike the role he plays, he does long for love. He has spoken about it openly, admitting that he prays for his future wife, that he desires to share his journey with someone who understands his mission. And yet, even with that longing, he continues to wait. This waiting, however, is not passive. Jonathan describes it as active preparation, a season of growth that is shaping him for the future. He does not see singleness as an empty void, but as an opportunity. In interviews, he has said that being single has given him the time to strip away pride, to reflect on his life, and to focus deeply on his calling. While others may rush into relationships out of fear of being alone, Jonathan chooses to use this time to strengthen his relationship with God. That is what makes his story resonate with so many. He transforms what the world might call loneliness into something sacred. His singleness becomes a testimony of faith in action, a living example of trust. But fans cannot help asking, how long can this waiting last? The suspense builds every time Jonathan steps into the public eye. When he attends events alone, people wonder if he has finally met someone but chosen not to reveal it. When he shares his thoughts about faith and love, listeners search for hidden clues, hoping to catch even the smallest glimpse into his personal life. The irony is that Jonathan himself does not hide from these questions. He addresses them with calm honesty, saying that marriage for him is not about meeting society's deadlines, but about walking into a covenant designed by God. That unwavering stance is what both fascinates and frustrates his fans. Because while they admire his patience, they are desperate to know, when will this story shift from waiting to fulfillment? Part of the suspense also comes from the clarity with which Jonathan describes the kind of woman he hopes to marry. He doesn't speak vaguely. He paints a picture. She must be compassionate. She must be kind. And most importantly, she must love the Lord with all her heart. These requirements are not casual preferences. They are non-negotiables born from painful lessons in his past. Jonathan has admitted that in earlier relationships, he sometimes compromised, believing that differences in faith could be managed. But time and heartbreak taught him otherwise. Without shared devotion, he says, a relationship cannot endure. That wisdom, gained through disappointment, has made him resolute. Today, he refuses to settle for anything less than a partner who shares his vision of life and faith. And this is what makes his story so gripping. It is not just about a man being single at 50. It is about a man who knows exactly what he wants and refuses to accept less. That kind of certainty is rare in today's world. In Hollywood especially, where relationships often form and dissolve in the blink of an eye, Jonathan's patience feels radical. It sets him apart. It makes his story larger than life, almost like a modern parable. People are not just waiting for Jonathan's love story because of curiosity. They are waiting because it feels like watching destiny unfold in real time. Still, there is another layer of mystery here. Jonathan often reminds fans that he is just a man, human and flawed, despite the holy character he portrays. He does not want to be seen as someone who is too holy to marry. He has said clearly that he longs for love not out of weakness, but out of calling. He believes marriage is a sacred partnership, a way to grow closer to God together, to carry each other through trials, to lift each other in prayer, and to build a home filled with love. That vision of marriage, realistic yet deeply spiritual, is what drives his patience. He does not see marriage as a milestone or an achievement, but as a covenant that must be entered with the right person at the right time under God's guidance. And so the suspense continues. Because every time Jonathan speaks, every time he shares a glimpse into his private hopes, fans are left with more questions than answers. Has God already prepared the woman he has prayed for? Is she waiting silently, just as he is? Could she even be someone already in his life, unseen until the perfect moment? The mystery lingers, and the anticipation only grows stronger. For Jonathan, there is no panic, no despair. He trusts God's timing completely. But for the world watching him, the waiting has become a story of its own, a suspense-filled journey that feels destined to end in something extraordinary. As the world continues to watch Jonathan Roumie with a mixture of admiration and curiosity, one thing becomes clear. His life does not follow the script people expect. By now, fans had assumed they would eventually see him appear on red carpets with a partner, sharing personal details in interviews, or even posting glimpses of a family life on social media. But none of that has ever happened. Instead, Jonathan keeps his private world sealed tight, and this silence only fuels speculation. People whisper, has he chosen faith over romance? Or is there a hidden story he does not want the world to know? At 50, most celebrities either face questions about their marriages or stories about divorce. But Jonathan faces something even more unique, the mystery of being completely unattached. Reporters who have tried to dig into his past often come up empty-handed. There are no long lists of public relationships, no ex-partners coming forward with stories, no drama that usually surrounds Hollywood figures. In fact, it is almost as if he has walked through the entertainment industry without leaving any footprints of romance behind. That in itself is shocking, because in a world obsessed with love stories, Jonathan Roumie has managed to live without giving anyone one. Yet, that doesn't mean people haven't tried to connect the dots. Some fans point to the depth of his spiritual commitment, saying he has devoted his entire heart and soul to his faith, leaving no space for marriage or relationships. Others argue that perhaps Jonathan has loved in silence, choosing to protect those experiences from the world's intrusive gaze. After all, not everyone wants their personal life dissected in headlines and gossip columns. His silence could either mean nothing ever happened, or that something did, but it was too precious to expose. This silence becomes louder when you consider his career. Jonathan Roumie's portrayal of Jesus in The Chosen has forever linked him to an image of selflessness, sacrifice, and purity. Many believe that the role itself demands a kind of reverence that doesn't allow space for rumors or scandals. Imagine the pressure of being admired not just as an actor, but as a symbol of holiness. Could that be why Jonathan stays away from relationships that might cause distractions or controversies? Could he be protecting not just his own image, but also the message his work carries? And yet, there's another side to the story. Behind the cameras, Jonathan is still a man, not just a character. He has dreams, emotions, and the natural human longing for companionship. Fans often ask themselves, does Jonathan go home to an empty house every night? Does he secretly crave a family of his own, but has sacrificed that dream for his calling? Or is he genuinely content with his life as it is, finding fulfillment in his career and faith without the need for marriage? These unanswered questions hang in the air, creating an aura of mystery around him. The suspense only deepens when you realize how rare this is in today's world. Celebrities often thrive on attention, using their personal lives as part of their brand. But Jonathan has done the opposite. He has built a career not on scandal, but on silence. This makes his story both puzzling and fascinating. The absence of an answer becomes the answer itself. Jonathan Roumie is unlike anyone else in Hollywood. His life is proof that not every story has to fit into the same mold, and that sometimes the most shocking truth is not what we see, but what remains hidden. And so, the world waits. Every interview, every public appearance, every small detail sparks fresh speculation. But Jonathan keeps moving forward quietly, letting people wonder, letting them guess, never once giving away the ending. His life remains an open book with missing chapters, and perhaps that is exactly how he wants it to be. If Jonathan's silence about his personal life has left people intrigued, then his past whispers and rumored connections have only fueled the fire further. Over the years, there have been countless speculations about whether he had been romantically involved with someone privately, away from the public's eyes. Some fans claim that certain moments in his interviews hinted at a deeper, hidden story, an unspoken chapter that he never openly addressed. These hints were subtle, almost like fragments scattered across time, never enough to form a clear picture, but powerful enough to leave people asking, what if Jonathan had already experienced love but chose not to reveal it? Adding to the mystery are his strong spiritual values. Jonathan has openly expressed how his faith is not just a part of his life, but the very foundation of it. For him, relationships are not about casual moments or fleeting connections. They are about deep commitment, shared beliefs, and purposeful living. This standard, while noble, may have been the very reason he never rushed into a relationship. Could it be that Jonathan, despite opportunities, simply chose to wait for the one person who matched his vision of love and faith? If so, this patience has set him apart from the industry's norm, where relationships often come and go like passing storms. But here lies the twist that keeps his story so compelling. Fans aren't just curious about why he hasn't married, they're also curious about who could possibly be the one to win his heart. With his rising popularity through The Chosen, especially after portraying such an iconic role, people wonder if his stardom has now placed him in a paradox. On one hand, his fame attracts countless admirers who would love to be in his life. On the other hand, this very spotlight may make it harder to find genuine connections, because how can he know who truly loves Jonathan the man, not Jonathan the actor? As questions pile up, one thing becomes clear. His single status at 50 is not just about personal preference. It is also about the immense responsibility he feels toward his career and his audience. He carries himself with a certain weight, almost as though he understands that every move he makes is carefully watched, dissected, and even judged. In this light, could Jonathan be protecting not just himself, but also the sacredness of his potential relationships from the chaos of public opinion? It's an idea that makes sense, and yet it doesn't quiet the curiosity of those who follow him so passionately. The more you think about it, the more the mystery deepens. Perhaps Jonathan has walked away from love more than once, not because he didn't want it, but because it didn't align with his values or timing. Or perhaps he has quietly held on to the hope that the right person will come into his life when the moment is divinely aligned. Whatever the case may be, his choice. To remain single at this stage of life paints him as a figure of both intrigue and inspiration. It tells us that sometimes, not rushing into the world's expectations can be more powerful than blindly following them. But the real question that no one can ignore is this: has Jonathan already chosen a life of permanent singleness, dedicating himself fully to his craft and faith? Or is the greatest twist yet to come? The possibility that one day, when no one expects it, Jonathan might surprise the world with the revelation of a love story unlike any other. As Jonathan Roumie's popularity soared with The Chosen, the curiosity surrounding his personal life grew even more intense. Fame has a way of magnifying not only the light of a person's achievements, but also the shadows of their silence. For Jonathan, that silence revolved around one central mystery: his relationship status. Fans who adored him for his role as Jesus often blurred the lines between the character and the man. They wondered if Jonathan, like the figure he portrayed, chose a path of deep devotion that left little room for romance. Or was it something else entirely? A deliberate decision to keep the world guessing. By the time The Chosen reached millions of homes across the globe, Jonathan had become more than just an actor. He had turned into a symbol. He stood for faith, humility, and sacrifice. Yet, beneath the applause and admiration, he carried the weight of whispers. Paparazzi began to search for any clue, scanning his appearances for signs of a hidden partner. But time and again, Jonathan appeared alone. No date on the red carpet, no companion at private events. This consistency puzzled both his fans and critics. Was it a testament to his single life, or proof that he was simply an expert at keeping his personal world private? The silence became louder each year. While other actors opened up about their marriages, divorces, or new romances, Jonathan kept everything locked away. It wasn't just a strategy, it became a part of his identity. He was the man who shared his faith, his craft, his struggles in the entertainment industry, but not his heart. And that made people speculate even more. Social media brimmed with theories. Some argued he had chosen celibacy, dedicating his life entirely to his spiritual mission. Others whispered that he had been in love once but chose not to pursue it for reasons only he could understand. This pressure was not without its consequences. Jonathan often spoke about how fame tested his humility and his faith. Fans wanted pieces of him that he wasn't willing to give. For a man deeply rooted in his values, this was a daily battle, balancing authenticity with boundaries. Unlike many celebrities who use their love lives for publicity, Jonathan refused to trade his heart for headlines. And in a world where silence is often misinterpreted as secrecy, his choice stood out all the more. But silence does not erase questions. Instead, it creates an echo chamber where every possibility grows louder. Could Jonathan still be single because he was waiting for something extraordinary? Or had the responsibilities of fame left no room for love? His 50 years of life had been marked by devotion to his craft and faith, yet the absence of a known partner kept fans restless. Some admired his discipline, while others pitied what they imagined as loneliness. Yet, what no one could deny was this. Jonathan's life choices, however mysterious, carried purpose. He was not a man led by impulse, but by conviction. Whether single by circumstance or by choice, he embodied an idea that fulfillment does not always come from romance. Sometimes it comes from service, from art, and from living with integrity even under the burning light of fame. And so, the suspense continued. Every red carpet appearance, every interview, every candid photo added more fuel to the mystery. The world waited for him to either confirm or deny, but Jonathan gave nothing away. At 50, his relationship status remained the most asked and least answered question of his life. But perhaps that was the point. Perhaps Jonathan Roumie wanted people to understand that some mysteries are not meant to be solved so easily. Fame is like a double-edged sword. It gives you love, attention, and opportunities that few ever dream of, but it also takes something in return. For Jonathan Roumie, this has been one of the greatest mysteries of his life. At 50, with the whole world asking about his personal journey, people can't help but wonder if the very fame that made him beloved has also kept him from settling down. Because when you live every day in the public eye, privacy becomes your most precious possession. And maybe, just maybe, Jonathan values his inner peace more than any relationship. Imagine this. Every time he steps onto a stage, attends a public event, or gives an interview, his words are dissected, his actions are analyzed, and his choices are judged. People want answers about his career, his faith, and most of all, his love life. Yet Jonathan has always been careful. He doesn't feed gossip columns, doesn't leave room for speculation, and never makes his private affairs a stage for public entertainment. That kind of control is rare in Hollywood, where headlines often define celebrities more than their talent. But this silence raises even bigger questions. Is Jonathan hiding a love story we don't know about? Or has he chosen a path of solitude, focusing only on his mission, his career, and his devotion to his beliefs? In an age where everything is shared online, where even the smallest personal detail becomes viral, his secrecy feels almost revolutionary. And this adds even more suspense for his fans, because the less he says, the more people want to know. Still, this isn't just about romance. Jonathan's life has always been defined by purpose. From his powerful role as Jesus in The Chosen to his commitment to inspiring faith across the globe, his story feels larger than life. And sometimes, a person with such a calling may choose to live differently. For some, marriage and family are natural steps. But for others, the calling of their mission becomes so consuming that personal relationships take a back seat. Could it be that Jonathan has sacrificed his personal desires for a greater role, one that impacts millions of people worldwide? This idea is not far-fetched. History is filled with figures who gave up conventional lives for something greater. Saints, leaders, artists, and visionaries often walked paths of solitude, not because they couldn't find love, but because they were devoted to something higher. Fans who admire Jonathan see this same kind of sacrifice in him. Maybe he's not single because he lacks love, but because he has chosen a different kind of love. The love of his faith, his art, and the people whose lives are touched by his work. And yet, The human heart is complicated. Even someone as strong and inspiring as Jonathan must face moments of longing. Late nights when the applause fades, when the cameras are off, and when the crowds are gone. Does he ever sit quietly and wonder what it would be like to share his life with someone? Does he imagine a partner walking by his side, not just through fame, but through the ordinary days of silence, rest, and home? These questions create a tension that no headline can answer. What keeps this mystery alive is Jonathan's refusal to clarify. He lets the world speculate, lets fans write their own stories, but he stays silent. That silence is powerful. It keeps people guessing, it fuels conversations, and it turns his personal life into a riddle that no one can solve. And perhaps that's exactly how he wants it. Because in the end, the unanswered questions are what keep people coming back, always searching, always wondering about the truth hidden behind the curtain. But here lies the most fascinating contradiction in Jonathan Roumie's story. For a man who has captured the hearts of millions through his portrayal of Jesus in The Chosen, he has remained almost invisible when it comes to sharing his personal life. And yet, in this very silence, fans have found reasons to speculate, wonder, and even create entire narratives about him. Why is he still single at 50? Is it truly by choice, or has life simply led him down a path where love has remained elusive? Some argue that his deep devotion to faith has created a different kind of relationship, one that does not revolve around a romantic partner, but around his mission, his calling, and his audience. Unlike many actors who seek fame, recognition, and material success, Jonathan has often spoken about humility and service. Could it be that he believes his journey isn't about building a family of his own, but about inspiring the spiritual family that follows him across the globe? Yet, even as fans admire his commitment, others raise harder questions. Does his single status reveal hidden struggles? Has he faced heartbreaks that he never spoke about publicly? Could he have chosen solitude to protect himself from the pain of failed love, preferring peace over turmoil? Or perhaps he simply hasn't found someone who shares his unique path, a path where faith, career, and personal life intertwine so tightly that only the rarest person could truly understand him. The suspense deepens when we remember how often public figures are forced into secrecy. Hollywood, after all, is no stranger to whispered rumors, secret relationships, and carefully guarded truths. Some even believe that Jonathan's silence is not about privacy alone, but about shielding himself from the constant judgment of a world quick to criticize. In an industry where every detail is magnified, is it really surprising that someone like him would choose to keep love if it exists behind closed doors? And then, there's the undeniable charm of mystery itself. The less Jonathan reveals, the more people want to know. The more he avoids the subject, the louder the whispers become. This is the paradox of fame. Silence speaks louder than words. Every time he sidesteps a question about his relationship status, fans are left hanging, eager to fill the silence with their own imagination. It is almost as if Jonathan has unintentionally turned his private life into another performance. One where the audience is left to guess, interpret, and debate endlessly. Still, one cannot ignore the weight of time. At 50, the question of whether he will ever marry or remain single forever grows heavier. For some, age is just a number. For others, it signals a closing door, a ticking clock, a life chapter that may never be written. And in Jonathan's case, this tension between faith, fame, and time makes his story even more compelling. Because whether he remains single forever or surprises the world one day with a partner, the choice will never just be personal. It will carry the weight of the millions who follow him, admire him, and perhaps even see themselves in him. Jonathan's story, then, is not just about one man's relationship status. It is about the questions we all face, the balance between personal dreams and higher callings, between love and solitude, between the life we imagine and the one destiny writes for us. And as we move forward, the mystery only grows deeper, because no matter how much we search for answers, Jonathan Roumie seems determined to keep us guessing. As Jonathan Roumie's journey continued to inspire millions, another mystery began to stir, one that took fans deeper into the very heart of his personal philosophy. Many people wondered if Jonathan had chosen this path of singleness for so long. Was it simply a matter of timing, or was there a greater reason behind it? His life choices seemed deliberate, almost as though they were guided by an invisible compass. This wasn't just about relationships anymore. It was about the way he lived his entire life, with intention, with faith, and with a kind of discipline that most people could never sustain. The more fans observed him, the more the questions grew. Did Jonathan believe his mission in life demanded sacrifice at this level? Or was there still a quiet possibility that he was waiting for something greater, something extraordinary that the world had not yet seen? At 50, many would have settled into routines, families, or long-term commitments. Yet Jonathan's life felt open, dynamic, even unpredictable. There was a tension in his choices that mirrored the suspense of a story being written in real time. Some believed this was the very reason he was so magnetic to audiences. He wasn't trying to live a conventional life. Instead, he lived a life that kept people questioning, analyzing, and wondering where the next chapter would lead. This uncertainty became part of his mystique. Was he intentionally leaving his personal story unwritten, as though it were a book with blank pages waiting for the right hand to fill them in? His interviews only added to this air of intrigue. Jonathan often spoke about love, compassion, and faith in ways that transcended traditional definitions. To him, love was not limited to romance. It was something larger, something divine. And yet, when people listened carefully, there were always pauses, subtle hints that suggested he was not closed off to the idea of a partner. He simply refused to be defined by it. That balance between openness and independence fascinated people. Some saw it as strength, others as a quiet vulnerability. It made them wonder, could someone so deeply connected to his spiritual calling also carry a silent longing within his heart? Then came the whispers from those close to him, remarks that surfaced in articles or social media discussions. Friends of Jonathan sometimes hinted that he was deeply private, that he carried personal struggles with grace and dignity, and that the world only saw fragments of the man behind the role. These suggestions ignited even more speculation. Was his single status a shield, protecting him from the noise of the world? Or was it a quiet sacrifice, a deliberate offering to keep his heart focused on something beyond the ordinary? Every possibility felt plausible, and yet none were confirmed. Fans, however, were not discouraged by the lack of answers. Instead, it seemed to make them lean in closer. His singleness became part of the puzzle that drew people deeper into his story. They watched his every move on social platforms, dissected his words in interviews, and debated endlessly about what he might be holding back. In a culture obsessed with transparency, Jonathan's choice to keep his personal life guarded only heightened the intrigue. It was as if he understood the value of mystery in a world where everything else was exposed. But mystery always invites theories, and with Jonathan, the theories were endless. Some were innocent, even hopeful, imagining that he was simply waiting for the right person, the one who shared his faith and mission. Others were more dramatic, suggesting he might never marry at all, that his destiny was something beyond the ordinary path of human connection. These conversations often said more about the fans themselves than about Jonathan. People projected their own hopes, fears, and desires onto him, making his story feel like a mirror of their own struggles with love, purpose, and belonging. Through it all, Jonathan remained steady. He continued to speak about living authentically, staying true to one's calling, and trusting God's timing. His message resonated with countless people because it wasn't polished perfection. It was a lived reality, marked by discipline, patience, and faith. This authenticity made fans feel closer to him, even though his most personal choices remained behind closed doors. In that way, Jonathan gave the world exactly what it needed to know while still holding on to the parts of his life that were sacred and private. And maybe, just maybe, that was the real secret. By not revealing everything, he reminded people that mystery itself can be holy, and so the suspense deepened. Fans who followed Jonathan's story were left balancing between what they knew and what they desperately wanted to know. The unanswered question, why Jonathan Roumie at 50 still walked the path of singleness, was no longer just about him. It was about faith, sacrifice, and the courage to walk a different road even when the world was watching closely. That unspoken tension is what kept audiences hooked, knowing that his life story was far from finished, and that perhaps the biggest revelation was still waiting to unfold. The world of Hollywood is often described as a place where love stories bloom quickly, but fade even faster. It's a world full of bright lights, constant travel, long working hours, and endless temptations. For many actors, balancing fame with relationships is like walking on a tightrope. Jonathan Roumie, at the age of 50, seems to have chosen a different path altogether, one that sets him apart from the usual stories of celebrity marriages and divorces. The fact that he is still single raises eyebrows, but it also sparks a deeper curiosity. What does this choice really say about him? When people look at Jonathan's life, they see a man who has dedicated so much of his time and energy to his career and his spiritual beliefs. He has built his reputation not just as an actor, but also as someone who carries himself with dignity, grace, and a deep sense of faith. Unlike many celebrities who chase attention through scandalous relationships or public breakups, Jonathan seems to have kept his private life far away from the spotlight. And perhaps that's where the real mystery lies. Is his singleness a decision made to protect his peace? Or is it the result of opportunities missed? Moments where love was just out of reach. Speculation continues to swirl among fans. Some whisper that he may have been in relationships in the past, but chose not to make them public. Others suggest that maybe he has never been truly in love, or that the kind of love he seeks is rare, something that cannot be rushed or compromised. These whispers only fuel the fascination, turning Jonathan into a figure of intrigue, someone who challenges the expectations society places on men his age. In a culture where being single at 50 is often seen as unusual, Jonathan flips the narrative, making it appear strong, intentional, and even admirable. But there's another side to the story. Being single doesn't mean being immune to loneliness. Behind the camera, away from the applause, could Jonathan ever feel the weight of walking life's journey alone? Many people who reach the age of 50 without marriage or children begin to reflect on what they might be missing. Yet, Jonathan doesn't seem like someone who carries regret in his eyes. If anything, his public appearances reveal a man who seems fulfilled, grounded, and content. This forces fans and critics alike to reconsider their own views. Maybe marriage isn't the only path to happiness, and yet, deep down, everyone wonders, does he have a hidden desire for companionship? Could it be that Jonathan is waiting for the right person, someone who shares not just his faith but also his values, someone who understands the demands of his career and the weight of his responsibilities? Love often comes in unexpected ways, and many believe that perhaps Jonathan's story isn't finished yet. Maybe his greatest romance is still waiting to unfold, just around the corner, in a moment nobody could predict. The suspense continues to build as fans debate and speculate, searching for clues in his interviews, his social media posts, and even the way he speaks about love and faith. Some think he drops subtle hints, others believe he avoids the topic altogether. But one thing is clear, Jonathan Roumie has become more than just an actor. He has become a symbol of strength, patience, and mystery. At 50, his singleness is not a weakness. It's a question mark, one that keeps his audience hooked, eager to see if the next chapter of his life will finally reveal the answer they've all been waiting for. As the story of Jonathan Roumie's life and choices draws to this point, we are left standing before a question that has no easy answer. After all the speculation, the whispers, the fan debates, and the media's endless fascination, one truth shines brighter than anything else. Jonathan Roumie has never let the world define him. Whether people choose to celebrate his single status, critique it, or question it, he continues walking on the path he believes in. And that, perhaps, is what makes his journey so captivating. At 50, when so many others are pressured into proving something about their personal lives, he is proving something far deeper. That fulfillment comes from faith, purpose, and service, not from conforming to the expectations of others. This is why his relationship status has become such a mystery, and perhaps why it may remain that way. To some, it feels like an unsolved puzzle. To others, it feels like a bold declaration. But for Jonathan, it simply seems like a matter of authenticity. He has said more than once that true happiness comes not from chasing fame or wealth or even relationships, but from aligning one's life with God's will. If marriage is in that plan, then it will happen in its own time. If it is not, then he remains at peace with the life he has chosen. That quiet conviction is something rare in a world obsessed with noise. And so the mystery of Jonathan Roumie's personal life lives on. Fans may speculate, journalists may continue asking, social media may never stop buzzing with theories. But maybe the beauty of this entire story lies in its unanswered questions. Isn't it true that the most powerful stories are the ones that leave us curious, the ones that don't give us all the answers, the ones that make us think long after the curtain falls? Jonathan's life is one of those stories, a story that reminds us that not every question is meant to be solved. Sometimes the question itself is the gift. Perhaps this is why Jonathan inspires so many people across the world. He stands as a reminder that you don't need to live according to the world's timeline. You don't need to prove anything by a certain age. You don't need to settle for something less than what your heart truly believes in. His example speaks to all those who have felt pressured, judged, or misunderstood. It says, you are allowed to walk your own path. You are allowed to trust your own timing. You are allowed to believe that your worth is not tied to your relationship status, and that